in the East. We've figured it out since November. But just in terms of the Oilers and the turnaround, and if I asked you who has had a bigger impact on the Oilers, would it be Evander Kane or Jay Woodcroft?
I think Evander has, and just so you know, I am at 100%, and it's just that I'm on fumes because when you're here, you don't
yes.
get that. So
that's no, we
know. I just did 2 hours on the air myself, and I'm about to do another 3.5.
Well, we appreciate your time.
No. Here's Evander Kane has brought Edmonton something that they lacked. It's funny when they had Lucic and Maroon and Cassian and Darnell Nurse at that time. I mean, Darnell was not their top pairing defenseman. And so they had that physical impetus, but they got a little slow. And so Ken Holland's reputation is that he intimidates through speed and skill and power plays. Dave Tippett and Jim Playfair did an excellent job on special teams. The first year they came in, the Oilers were first in the league in the power play, second in the PK. And then last year in the Canadian division, but overall, Edmonton was again first in the league in the power play, ninth in PK. Their penalty killing went sideways. Mikko Koskinen had a horrendous stretch. Your listeners are smart enough to know even Vezina, and I'm not calling Koskinen a Vezina caliber goal, even great goalies have 6 or 7 crappy games in a row. And so the Oilers went through this miserable 2-11-2, string that basically undermined the long-term tenure of Dave Tippett. So for me, the combination of Jay Woodcroft, who knew a lot of the players from the minors, but also had coached Connor and Leon and Darnell, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on Todd McClellan's staff before, that combination with Dave Manson, I think it was just, it's not a dead cat bounce like Berkey would say. This is, Jay's got a 700 winning percentage. Like this has gone on now for 30 games. So he's done a pretty good job. They're way better 5-on-5. They're not as reliant on special teams. They're still susceptible to, specific just like there's fans in Toronto worried about whether or not the Leafs can, are going to be battle tested and wary in the playoffs. I think Toronto's been a little bit unlucky with who some of the matchups have been because they play in a tougher division, with the exception of last year. Let's just write that all up together. But the 3 years prior, when they didn't come out of the first round. But I do think that the bigger impact has been the coaching change. I really, 30 games in, the numbers would suggest that's the case.
I don't know. You get the sense that that Ken Holland it was really hard for him to pull the trigger and fire Tippett. That rumor had been there for a while, and push came to shove, and ultimately he didn't have any other choice. But was it a foregone conclusion Jay Woodcroft will be the guy to take over? I mean, was he groomed that way? Is he Sheldon Keefe, where everybody knew after Babcock, we knew where it was heading, and this is the future here? Because Jay Woodcroft and I think Dave Manson they've got their contracts expiring at the end of the year. I mean, there is a possibility they don't sign in Edmonton, they go coach somewhere else. I mean, where do you see this thing playing out?
Nick, there was a possibility in January that Dave Manson was going to get hired by, trying to think if he played with this guy, but by somebody who was going to circle back as a NHL head coach in a Western Canadian or Western market, not a Western Canadian market. And ultimately that change did not get made. And Manson was on the radar screen for that coach to go in and take over a team. So I think they're both, I think it's a slam dunk that Woodcroft and Manson will be extended. Was it a foregone conclusion? No, because if you take a look at the history of Bob Nicholson and Ken Holland, they like experience.
Yes.
And I know everybody in Toronto's, really down on Mike Babcock. I've known Mike all the way back from when he coached the Lethbridge Pronghorns in 1994. He's a good coach. He's a confident man. If you push back at him, you tend to have better conversations sometimes. But, I mean, he's sitting at the University of Saskatchewan. It's not like he's golfing every day down in Phoenix. Like, this is a guy that still loves the game enough to coach that he's coaching a youth sports team for nothing. So, I'm glad Jay got the opportunity. I believe in organic growth for players, and I extend that metaphor for coaches as well. But I think there may have been some – and the other guy is Glenn Gulletson, who's on the Oilers staff, right? Like, he's had 2 NHL head coaching opportunities, maybe one in Dallas when he wasn't quite ready by his own admission. And then I think in Calgary, he was going to make the playoffs 2 years in a row, and then they went like 2-11-2 in their final 15. the year he got relieved by Brad Treliving. So I don't think it was 100% slam dunk it was going to be Jay, but I'm glad Jay's gotten that chance, and I think he's done a great job.
Stauf, we've been handicapping the Western Conference playoff race. The 3 seed in the Pacific is up for grabs in the wild card spots. What are your thoughts on the 3 teams scrapping it out there, Dallas, LA, and Vegas? And you know, I guess I'll leave it there because I guess it's unclear who Edmonton would face yet.
So, Justin, you're giving Edmonton the second spot in the Pacific?
I think so. I am. Are you not as comfortable as me?
Well, maybe I got spoiled all those years. I did the Alberta Golden Bears at a bad year was when we lost 3 games, but I digress. The reality of the situation is that, Edmonton's 2 points up on the Kings right now, a couple games in hand. LA's got a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way, but Edmonton does have the extra games. I don't think both, put it this way, I think 5 teams from the Central are going to make it in 3 from the Pacific. The Central's much stronger. It's almost crazy, you guys, when you think of how good those the Cali teams were. San Jose, Anaheim, and LA. I mean, it was like the Oilers were the proverbial 90-pound weakling at the beach. They used to just they weren't physical enough to take those teams. All 3 of those teams had big centers. Thornton was in San Jose, and Kopitar, well, I guess he's still in LA, and Getzlaf was in Anaheim, and it was just a terrible matchup. And this year, the Oilers went undefeated against the Cali teams on the road. They went 5-0. Wow. So, I think LA could get caught, but they do have the easier schedule, and something's missing with Vegas a bit. Like it's just, but I still respect Kelly McCrimmon, and they've got some really good players. That like I don't think Edmonton's. I know that like 538's got Edmonton at 95% chance to make the playoffs, and I think the Athletics got them about 94-95% chance as well. I know they run those simulation models, and I trust analytics to a certain degree, but I'm still from the show me state to see the end result. But I would think 3 Pacific, 5 Central will be the end result for out West.
Mm-hmm. Everybody seems to be saying if